Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stitches and Scribbles channel. My name is Erin and today we're going to be doing a short and sweet podcast, at least that's the plan. Can't account for rambling in advance because I actually don't have very much to show you because we are in the process of moving. So the background you're seeing right now is actually my craft room in our new basement. Unfortunately, the entire craft room is a mess right now because I'm in the process of organizing everything the way I want. I've got some projects out that I'm prepping for. So you get a plain white background for now, so that I didn't have to clean up between filming videos. But on that note, I will be doing some house related videos coming up in 2023, which sounds so weird to say. I think I've already mentioned this in podcasts before that was my plan, but it has now gone from the hypothetical when we get a house plan to very real and in progress. So let's go ahead and dive into just some upcoming videos to give you a heads up of what's coming your way. So for the month of November, as always, I've got a bullet journal video coming for you towards the end-ish of the month. And I have a Crochet With Me that was actually filmed, I think, back in August or September for one of my craft fair plushies. So at this point, you've seen a couple videos in that series. I actually filmed them all within the span of a week or two. But I made some pumpkins for my most recent craft fair, so you'll get to see those and kind of how I put the pieces together and the patterns that I used. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, if I have enough time to actually pull this off, but you should be getting a pattern release at the end of November. And this is a pattern that I've actually been working on for a while, but it's a very time-consuming pattern. So you actually would have seen it in my I made a shawl for the Oscars video that I did back in February. It's the same design, but I created that shawl pattern, which is going to be called the Sleigh Bell Shawl. I created it specifically to use with variegated holiday yarn because if you're anything like me, I love variegated yarns, but sometimes it's really hard to pick a pattern to use them with because they need kind of a blank canvas in order for you to really see the colors shine through, and complicated stitch patterns have a tendency to get lost in super variegated or stripy yarns. So I designed I believe it's a shield shaped shawl, somewhere between a semicircle and a hexagon, if that makes sense. I think shield shaped shawl is the correct term, if I'm remembering correctly. But I designed it so that most of it is just plain double crochets, so you can really see all of the beautiful colors in those holiday or variegated yarns. And then it has a fun trim at the end to give it some holiday pizzazz. So that should be coming out towards the end of November. But the reason it's taking so long, besides the fact that we're in the process of moving and there's just not a lot of time to sit and crochet, is that I used a one weight yarn for my sample, which was my mistake. I probably shouldn't have done that, but that was the holiday yarn that I had and the yarn that I designed the pattern for. It's actually the Hobie Universe yarn in one of the holiday colorways. So hopefully if I have some time at some point to sit and actually crochet, you'll get that pattern released. The pattern is actually done. The problem is that I need the photos of the final product in order to be able to finish the pattern and have it ready for release. But I've made it 3 or 4 times now, so the pattern is done and it's not super dependent on counting, so I don't need to get it tested or anything. But yeah, deciding to crochet a fine weight shawl that I wanted to be very, very large while I'm moving and other things are happening was probably a poor decision on my part. I probably should have started this back in June to make sure it was ready. But that's just the way it is. So those are the videos for November. And then I've definitely mentioned this a couple times before, but in December I am planning on doing Vlogmas. I'm going to do kind of an altered version of Vlogmas just because I've never done it before, so I want to give myself some like buffer zones in how I do it. So I'm actually going to start, at least the plan right now, is I'm going to start filming the day after Thanksgiving, and then that video will be my Vlogmas for December 1st. So what that's going to do is it means that the video footage you're seeing is a week old by the time it releases, or like 6 days or whatever that gap happens to be. And that means that if I, film that day and don't have time to edit that night or the next morning, I've got like some time to catch up. And it also means if there are days where I just can't film or I really don't have anything of interest to show you guys, I've got a couple days built in where I don't have to if I can't. But the goal is to have a video released every day from December 1st to December 25th. So, or December 24th, maybe. Well, I guess we'll see how it goes. You might get a Christmas Day video as well. But I'm super excited to try Vlogmas. That was probably my favorite thing the last 2 years about like the holiday season, was watching other people's Vlogmas videos. I know I really loved watching Nitty Natty and Corner of Craft. I know did one last year. I don't know if she did one the year before or not because I think I hadn't found her channel yet. But I've definitely watched Nitty Natty's. I also liked watching Sierra Schultz's, which like she's not a yarning creator, but I still had a lot of fun watching her videos. I think like way back I used to watch Remy Ashton's, so I really liked them because they're like short little videos, but I don't know, there was something about that format that I just really liked and found really comforting because, so last year was Christmas of 21, so Christmas of 2020 I was still teaching virtually from my full-time teaching job, but that meant that there was still a lot of time where I was in my apartment by myself because at that point my husband had gone back to work in person. So anytime I had a break during the day, it kind of just felt very lonely in my apartment. So I really liked those Vlogmas videos to kind of like feel like I was still hanging out with friends and doing like the normal holiday stuff, like watching people decorate and all of that. And then kind of the same for last year, although for Christmas of 2021 there were more things that were back to business as usual, but it was the first year that I was not a full-time teacher. So I also kind of had different ways of working with time because a lot of my work was me sitting in my apartment by myself again. So I really enjoyed having those Vlogmas videos to kind of pass the time and make it feel a little bit more in the holiday spirit when I wasn't seeing people in person regularly. So I'd like to continue that tradition myself now that I have slightly more established YouTube presence. And even though I know that for the most part things are business as usual as far as holidays now, in case there's anybody who's in the same situation or spending a lot of time at home, or maybe you just moved into an apartment by yourself, that you've got someone to hang out with for the month of December, because I know I really appreciated it in the last couple of years. Speaking of Vlogmas, I do, and I definitely showed this in a previous video because I showed it when I bought all the yarn, but I have a lot of pre-planned projects that I wanted to make. And I'm sorry if this part is repetitive because I'm pretty sure I've said it before, but I don't remember where. But I, this year, really thought about whether or not I wanted to purchase a yarn advent. And I looked at a couple different yarn dyers packages and like what was going to be included, but I couldn't really find any yarn advents where the theme really spoke to me and that were in my price range. So I did a lot of searching on Etsy, but ended up kind of feeling like it wasn't for me this year. It might be something I do in the future, but yarn advent seemed like a big undertaking, and I also didn't have a project in mind for what I wanted to do with all of the minis that would come in an advent. And I've already told myself ideally that if I purchase a yarn advent, I need to have a planned project of what I'm going to do with those minis, because otherwise I know they're just going to sit in my yarn stash because they're so pretty I won't want to use them, or if they like don't match, then I wouldn't want to use them all in one project or something like that. So I think in the future, if I do ever purchase a yarn advent, I'm going to need to find one that specifically fades from color to color instead of being like a random color each day. I think I need one that fades, or one where like once I open all of them, I can arrange them into a fade, something like that. Because I think if it's just random colors, I would want to use them all together because they all came together, but if they don't look right together, then I would have trouble with that. And that's like part of the whole thing of yarn advents is you don't know what's in it, so you can't really pre-plan that part. So instead, I decided that I would work on a specific skill during the month of December and pick something where I can do a little bit at a time and kind of make it like my own advent project. So this year I decided I wanted to work on color work. So I have 3 holiday color work projects planned. The first one that I'm going to start with, actually I have the yarn here, so hold on one second. I'm going to grab the yarn so I can reiterate with the correct image. Okay, we're back with yarn in tow. So the first project I had planned, I've actually done before, but I wanted to do a double stockinette striped infinity scarf, which I've done several of those at this point. I actually have another one in progress as well, but I don't know where it is at the moment because it's in a bag somewhere. But for that project, I picked these 2 shades of yarn. So this is from Emma's Yarn. One is Drapey DK and one is Simply Spectacular DK, which I know they're not exactly the same, but they're still both mostly merino, superwash merino. So this one is the Drapey DK in the color Harbor. It is 70% superwash merino, 30% silk, 231 yards, 100 grams. And that's all the information I need. But this is like a deep kind of tealy green, like very cool toned green. And then the other one I got is the Simply Spectacular DK, which is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 255 yards, 100 grams. So like decently similar specs, although this one has slightly more yardage. And this is in the color Christmas Sprinkles. So it's got little pops of red and that same like very cool toned green in there. You can really see it, like that spot has that green tone in it. But I wanted like a kind of peppermint candy stripe looking scarf with these 2. And I think this is going to be my first Vlogmas project because for Vlogmas we're probably going to be traveling in the first couple days because we're traveling for Thanksgiving, and I figured that this would be a really good car project to just do basic double stockinette stripes, not having to worry about like reading a chart or a pattern or anything like that, but still to like kick off the holiday spirit. This one should also be finished pretty quickly because of that, so I'm hoping that that means I have one to wear during the Christmas season right away. Right now I don't have any holiday knitwear other than I know I have a Santa hat somewhere that I crocheted last year, but I currently don't know where it is. Again, the moving process, so it probably should be unearthed by Christmas, but if not, hopefully this will be done fairly soon into December so that I have something holiday knit-wise that I can wear. The second project that I want to start is a colorwork cowl pattern by PNW Knitwear Designs, I think is what her business is called. But I follow her on Instagram and I love all of her patterns. She does these beautiful colorwork designs, but she has I think there's a couple patterns that fall in this category, but she has some designs called Doodle Cowls where the pattern comes with a bunch of different charts for different colorwork patterns, and you can choose how you want to set up the striping effect. So I wanted to do the holiday Doodle Cowl, and originally I went to my local yarn store and I was going to find a bunch of minis in a holiday colorway, but because I went in like June or July, they didn't have a lot of like Christmassy tones. It was a lot of like bright turquoises and yellows and hot pink and like neutrals, which is just not what I was looking for. I thought I'd at least be able to find like a good red and green, but I couldn't find multiple shades of red and green. So I thought that I was just going to have to like give up on that project or come back later to purchase yarn, but I ended up going to Hobby Lobby that week and found that they have sets of fine weight yarn. I forget what it's called because I took the label off because I'm starting to like get it ready for Vlogmas, but usually you can find them underneath the hand-dyed yarn section, and there'll be 6 colors all put together in one like package thing. But I purchased 2 of them and they look like this. So I've got kind of a like very warm toned Christmas set, which I think will be some nice contrast from my cool toned like peppermint stripe scarf. But I'm planning on using these to do the holiday Doodle Cowl. So you can see I've got up at the top kind of a rusty red, an almost like brownish coral color, and a beige, and then on the bottom I have a cream, a light green, and a darker kind of olive green. So I'm going to use those to create the holiday Doodle Cowl. Again, she has lots of wonderful designs, including some other Doodle Cowls. I know that there's a Halloween one and there's a video game inspired one, and I think one that's just patterns, like it doesn't make images or anything. But I will have to remember what her username is so that I can say it, make sure I'm saying it correctly, and so that you can find it on your own. But I'm very excited to do that one. This was the one I originally looked at being my Vlogmas project because I thought I could do like a couple stripes every day and have it be a thing, but I also realized with like travel and other stuff, I didn't think I could depend on being able to work on a single project every day for a certain amount. So I decided on this thinking that like I might speed through it. I might be working on it a little bit every day, but either way it'll be fun and festive. So that is project number 2. And then project number 3 was originally my backup for if I couldn't find materials for the holiday Doodle Cowl. I knew I wanted to make it anyway, but this is probably going to be my least prioritized Vlogmas project because it's not specifically Christmassy. So I could continue to wear it in the months after Christmas is over because it's just shades of green. But again, from the same designer who does the holiday Doodle Cowl, she also has one called the Sitka Spruce cowl that has like pine tree and pine cone motifs in the color work. And I really loved that design. It's like very woodsy, very pretty. So I bought yarn for that as well. These are both Emma's yarn in Simply Spectacular DK. This one is in the color Kale. So again, just like the Harbor one from my other set. It's 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 255 yards, 100 grams. Actually, no, this is the same as the Sprinkles from the other set. So this is the color Kale, beautiful dark kind of olivey green. And then I also got it in the color Sprout, which is looking white on camera, but it's a very pale like celadon green. So I got 2 skeins of each of those colors to do the Sitka Spruce cowl. And I think that's it for my Vlogmas plans. What else did I want to talk about today? I do have a couple acquisitions, but I'm going to talk about craft fairs first. So I did make it to the end of my craft fair season, at least for what I know of right now. I have a potential event in December, but I'm not sure if it's happening or if they're going to want vendors for that event, and I'll explain why in a minute. But I just had my final craft fair last weekend. This was one that was actually supposed to be back in September, but we moved it because of rain and wind that was happening on the original day. So it was on October 23rd instead. It went really well. I was surprised there weren't more people because it was actually a really beautiful day in October. And I feel like the last time I worked at that event in October last year, I think we had more people, but I also was wondering if like there weren't as many open events last year at this time, so maybe this was like the one thing people could go to on that Sunday where it happened to happen. But it seemed like there weren't a ton of people that walked through, but I still did pretty well, at least as well as I do at a farmer's market, even a little bit better than that, so that was good. I was surprised at what people purchased. So in the past, especially at the farmer's market, my number one seller has been my beaded earrings, which are just like little ones like this. I do have a tutorial for that on my channel of how to do simple beaded or simple charm earrings. And I think people gravitated towards those because I sell them for $5. They're pretty inexpensive, but I usually have at least 1 or 2 people who come in and buy like anywhere from 2 to like 7 pairs because they're buying for gifts or just want all the different color options or whatever. I was surprised I didn't sell as many earrings at this one as I did in the past. And my item that was actually doing the best was, I wrote this down. What was it? It was like my hats and headbands and stuff, and then my plushies also didn't do as well as they normally do. I thought I was going to run out of plushies. And I also had a lot of people looking at kind of the like house stuff. One of the things I've been making just in this past year is towel tamers. So it's a little piece to like keep a towel on a towel bar on an oven door. I had 2 different ladies come in and buy like 3 of them, and I only had 10, so that was pretty good. But yeah, between the hats and headbands doing better than they normally do, and not as many people buying plushies and earrings, I was kind of surprised, but it all worked out, so it doesn't really matter. I would say overall the blanket yarn plushies have been one of my best selling items this year. I'm really glad that I decided to include those in my craft fair stash, even though like they're kind of a pain to make. They're not really a relaxing item to make like some of my other ones are. Like the knitting machine hats and headbands, I can have, YouTube or a movie on and just kind of go until I'm done with however many I need. But with the blanket yarn ones, I have to look at the pattern or the blanket yarn plushies, I have to look at the pattern while I'm working on it. So it's not quite as mindless as some of the other things, but that's okay too. It's just a different level of brain power that goes into it. But I did really enjoy making those. I think my favorite ones I made this year were the mushrooms, which that video is already out on my channel. I think I sold a total of 5 or 6 of those this year, which is a lot considering the number of sales I get per week. I think the other item that I've made a lot of and has done really well are the Bumblebees. I think at this point I've made close to 30 of those, and I have 1 left, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, blanket yarn plushies were a big hit this year. I'm going to have to come up with some new plushie designs to use for next year so that hopefully I can get people like starting to create a collection of them. But yeah, craft fairs were awesome. My best craft fair this year was actually one that I got invited to at the last minute. It was the church that one of my friend's parents belonged to. They were looking for vendors, I guess because their vendors for the event canceled, so they were looking for new ones. And I ended up being the only vendor at this like fall festival at a church a couple suburbs away from mine. And that by far has been the best venue I have ever been at. I think it definitely was partially because I was the only vendor who was there, other than like pumpkins and food. But I had one lady who came and bought, I think by the end she had purchased like 6 knitting machine headbands and like 4 hats and a couple infinity scarves. She just went like all out, and I think bought gifts for her entire family or like set of coworkers or something. So that by itself was awesome. But I had so many people come through and buy like large quantities of things, and like several people there, like entire order was over $100 or even in a couple cases over $200. So that one was fantastic. But that church is thinking about having an event in December, so that's why I might have another craft fair to go to in December. But yeah, this year was definitely better than last year in terms of craft fairs. I definitely learned some things. I changed up some of my products so that I had more stock available and more different items as the summer progressed. I think the hardest thing about doing like a weekly event is that, well, it's a farmer's market, right? So people are coming to get like some of their weekly groceries at that event. So I'm seeing mostly the same people every time they come through the market. So I might like get them to purchase something the first couple of times, but after that they've like seen everything. So I have to keep changing up my stock to see like what sells well and, you know, kind of move through seasons a little rapidly because it's all over the summer. So I started with like very summery things and like house cleaning things and household items. And I had to transition into like fall and winter hats and headbands and some of the like warmer wearable items as the summer went on. So it was an interesting experiment to like really hone in on what people were looking for and what drew people in to check out my stand. And then as far as my other events, I definitely learned more about like how to set up my table so that it looks more appealing, and how to set up so that I don't need to have every single item out on the table, like have some underneath to replace items that have been purchased. Because I've definitely figured out that like a wide variety of types of items is better than having like every single color of a specific item out so that people can see. Like if people are interested in like a twisty headband, for example, they'll ask like, oh, do you by any chance have any of this color? And I can always pull them out if I see that somebody's interested, but I don't necessarily have to have every single one out on the table, if that makes sense. But yeah, very successful craft fair season, and that brings me to purchases. So I believe it was last April, one of the groups that I do craft show with, I was placed next to someone who does handmade pottery, and I noticed she had yarn bowls. And that day was just super windy and horrible, so I didn't end up making a purchase that day. But I kind of told myself, like, I'd really like a yarn bowl for, partially just for, like, my podcast display. Eventually I'm going to have, like, a shelf in my background to display some of my, like, cool items and seasonal yarn and stuff. But I said I would only buy it if I could get it from a small creator, because I know they have them at like Michael's and Hobby Lobby and Joann. But I didn't really want to get like a mass produced one. I wanted like a local handmade one. So that pottery group was at this most recent craft fair that I was at. So I did purchase a yarn bowl from them. It's a beautiful like sage green color with some like it's not texture, but the like drippy pattern on it is kind of olivey. It looks a little bit blue. And this is from Laura's Handcrafted Pottery. If I don't remember to put it in the description box, please remind me. I can link her Instagram down there. But I loved the design. I thought this was so pretty and like the perfect color. I love any shades of green, so I was really excited to see this. And then the other purchase I have was actually from a vendor fair that I was not a part of, but there's an event. I don't know how often they do it, but I've definitely seen it before and not gone. This was just the first year I did go. But in the Milwaukee area, there's a group called Made in Nerdwalkie that does, I think, yearly shows, and I don't think it's been at the same location every time, but I'm not 100% sure. But I decided to go this year. I think it was early October, like maybe the first or second weekend. And I wanted to check it out because A, I knew it would be a great place to look for Christmas presents for people. And B, I saw that there was going to be a yarn dyer there. So I purchased 3 skeins from Lady Pearl Yarns. And I picked this yarn because it's inspired by the Sanderson sisters from Hocus Pocus. So this yarn is called Put a Spell on You. It's a fingering sock weight, 100 grams, 462 yards, 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon, and made in Milwaukee. So this is the Lady Pearl logo, and then the yarn name. So I got 3 of these because I love this colorway so much. I love anything to do with Halloween, but like I love these deep, rich fall tones. So I have no idea what I'm going to make with these. Possibly a shawl or like a really drapey sweater vest is kind of what I was thinking. Something that I could wear with my Ren Fair costume, but also wouldn't be out of place with normal clothing was kind of the goal I had. But I was really excited to support a local yarn dyer, especially at an event that was not specifically for yarn dyers. So that was exciting to check out, and I was really excited about it because I wasn't able to go to the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival this year, so that was a nice like replacement for it, was I still got to check out some cool hand-dyed yarn. But I think that's going to be it for this podcast. I know a lot of it was probably repeated information from previous podcasts, but I'm also just really excited about everything that's kind of going into motion now. So yeah, in the future, you'll see my actual craft room in videos, especially for Vlogmas, but I am going to do dedicated videos for how I chose to decorate spaces in my house, in 2023, just so that they don't have to be released at the same time as Vlogmas stuff. But I'm very excited to show you all the things that we're working on, especially the craft room. That's obviously the most exciting part. But yeah, that's going to be it for this podcast. If you liked what you watched today, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. I'll also have linked my other social media accounts so that you can follow me there. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.